Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. It is my honor and my pleasure to introduce to you this evening the CEO and president of the Detroit Recovery Project. Andre Johnson is a dynamo. If you don't know him, he is a global leader. I said global. He does recovery not only in the United States, but also in Africa and around the world. He is a speaker that is called on to talk about addiction, to help people move forward, and to learn how you can bring addiction programming to your community and what can be done. He also has a personal story. Good evening, Andre. How are you?
Good evening. I'm absolutely wonderful, fantastic, and honored to be on the Kim B. Davis Show.
Well, thank you, Andre, because do you still have your show?
Absolutely not.
It's okay. It's okay. It's going to come back. It's going to come back. Because, see, I had the honor of being on your show. So I am honored that you will come here. So,
Well,
but
we always have a way of getting on each other's shows. We
yes,
circle back. We circle back and forth in and out of each other's lives,
absolutely. Absolutely.
professionally in the professional realm. So it's been great knowing you. I mean, shoot, I've been knowing you at least 10, 15 years, maybe.
Yes, Miles will be 12 years old
Yeah,
this
well, yeah, I knew you before Miles.
Yes,
Yeah. Well, tell Miles I said hello,
I
and,
sure
and
will.
and your husband I said hello as well.
I sure will. All right, so let's get to it. So,
Yeah.
Andre, I know you've had a fantastic year because I've seen some things that you've done in the media and you've had some personal achievements. But I don't know about you, but 2020 has just been a crazy year. It started off with COVID. Then we saw Ahmaud Arbery murdered on film. Couldn't believe it. Then we saw George Floyd murdered on film. Couldn't believe it. And then we heard about Breonna Taylor. And we were like, okay, what is happening? The country erupted in unrest. There were protests around the world. And it was sort of surreal. Like, is all of this really happening? On top of that, we have an election. We have leadership that's been spewing vitriol from the White House. We have people who are angry and upset. 164 people have lost their lives to police violence in 2020. And every day there's a new video. The last video I saw was a Versace executive who was in Beverly Hills who was pulled over for jaywalking. And every time I see a video, I am equally disturbed. With all of that, and even with all that you have on your plate in dealing with addiction and community programming and activism, how are you feeling as a Black American man?
Woo, you talked about a lot, Kim. And, I mean, it's the times. Malcolm X said, the chickens have come home to roost. Um, Malcolm X said, the ballot or the bullet. Um, it's time for us to be responsible and vote. It's time for us to be progressive and learn how to be more strategic with our lobbying efforts and advocating where we can begin to leverage resources to fight our fight as Black people. As a Black man, I was recently in my car, at a stop sign, and you know how you glance in your rearview mirror and you know the police is right in back of you. And so I made a right, and and less than 10 seconds later, whoop, 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 the police lights were, I was being pulled over as I was dropping off a friend of mine at his home. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm legal. I have valid driver's license. I have valid registration. I have valid insurance. So I asked and so both officers exit out of their car, a young Black officer and a young Caucasian officer. And I say, why am I being stopped? And they say, well, we typed in your license plate number, and your license plate is registered to a Dodge Ram automobile. So I give them that look like, this, there has to be a mistake. This is absolutely impossible. Absolutely impossible. And then I ponder and I think to myself, why are you typing in my license plate number in the first place?
Absolutely.
And so, 5, 6, 7 minutes go by, and the white officer approaches, and he said, I I typed the wrong number in. I'm only human. I apologize. And it was just no real, genuine, authentic apology. And again, why are you typing in my number if I have not done anything illegal to be stopped in the first place? So, as a black man that's constantly stopped by law enforcement, a black man 6'4" with dreadlocks, people tend to have all types of stereotypes, all types of stigma, just because of my height, just because of my hair, just because of my ethnicity. And so for me, I think the microaggressions need to cease. I think the bias that occurs in our country, locally and nationally, needs to cease. And I think, the movements and the protests have the potential to help to change, to help to break some of the cycles of some of the systemic change that occurs in our country. So I think it's a lot of work. I mean, we got a lot of work. We got years of stuff that we have not dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, certain white folks have these constant approaches of microaggression. And most of the time, it's not addressed. It's hard to have a real conversation and dialogue around race and the impacts of not having that dialogue, the impact of the silence, of how it affects people of color. But we have to have these educated conversations, and I think it's important. And
Mm-hmm.
so, as a black man, I've learned to address things accordingly. Sometimes, despite my feelings and emotions about the situation, I've learned that I can't always respond based upon my feelings and my emotions. And I have to respond appropriately, as well as, intellectually, um, with the end game of, changing something, with the end game of breaking down the stigma and the stereotypes of a black man wearing a hood is a danger in our society. I read a book when I was in college in 1995. It was entitled The Black Man, Dangerous, Single, and Obsolete.
Mm.
And this was interesting because this book was written in the early 90s. And it was describing how the black man in America is portrayed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a really good book that really adds some insight on how others typically view us.
Mm-hmm.
But, and so there's another component that I think is important, which is um, really exploring and addressing some of the historical trauma that Black folks have endured post slavery, post Jim Crow. How historical trauma has really affected African Americans in this country is a conversation I think we don't add enough light to. And there's a lot of people who are suffering from traumatic experiences. A traumatic experience is something people can allow to relive mentally that can affect you, um, to the point of having ongoing anxiety, having ongoing depression, having ongoing post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well said. Well said, Andre. And I know you. I know you're a Morehouse man. You're well educated. You live well. So I know you weren't in a Pinto. So again, the question comes, why are you typing my license plate number in the car? Is it because, as you said, I'm 6'4", I have locks, and you're angry because the vehicle that I drive, you got a problem with it because you don't think that I should have that? Or are you angry because, you know, whatever the reason is, you don't think I belong in a neighborhood that you were in? Possibly, who knows? But you're right, those are conversations that we definitely need to have. So I want to pivot a little bit because we are a couple weeks out from a rather important election. I think this is the most important election of many of our lifetimes. You know, I know that's something that's been said. I've been voting since I turned 18. And for me, this is the most important election of my lifetime. I have two sons, you know that. One is 12 and he's getting ready to start becoming a teenager. So he's going to want to hang out and drive and do all the normal things that kids should do. But as you said, it becomes an issue because if he wears a hoodie because it's cold and that's what kids like to do, he might be typecast or stereotyped or racially profiled because of it. Or he might be profiled, as someone else said, when 3 or 4 or more are gathered, then it looks like it's a gang. And it might just be his friends and they're just hanging out. But unfortunately for Black people, those are stereotypes and things that we have to think about outside of the spectrum of our emotions or outside of what we're feeling. So I want to ask you, what does this election symbolize for you? Is it important to you, or are you not necessarily concerned?
Well, I think the election is absolutely important. I think it's important to not only me, but a whole lot of people of color. From what I've shared a lot of conversations with people. The stuff that have occurred on Trump's watch, and especially being a Michigander and seeing what our governor experienced last week in
Yeah.
terms of a conspiracy to kidnap the governor of the state of Michigan. Um, and we all know that Trump has said some things to ignite, incite um, white supremacy, and it has to be stopped. It has to be addressed. And I think that, so when you pose the question about how important is this election, it's important for our nation and our country to come together. I think all he has done for the last 4 years has been very good at division, dividing our bordering relationships across the country and the world, um, dividing our relationships in America as well. And so, yes, this is a very, very important election because if people don't show out in numbers and vote for the president that they want, we will have the president that most people don't want. And we already know who that is.
Mhm, mhm. Well said. Well said. All right. So now, can you tell us about the Detroit Recovery Project and what it is you do and your mission statement?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we didn't even get there, huh?
I know we didn't even get there. We talked so much.
You went straight in. So, Detroit Recovery Project is an organization that I was instrumental in founding around the year 2001. I was working out of the health department and looking at data and numbers of people who had substance use disorder problems in the city of Detroit. And at the time, we had something called a high recidivism rate. That meant that people who were going through a 30, 60, 90-day residential treatment program would relapse within the first 30 days, and which means return back to drug and alcohol use.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that we found, Kim, is that when people completed treatment, they really didn't have a support system in the community to help them navigate, to help them really work through their entire recovery process. They didn't have that safety net. And so that's how Detroit Recovery Project came to fruition. We started working, we became an independent nonprofit and a licensed peer-led, peer-ran, peer-driven substance abuse agency in the city of Detroit. And our responsibility is to continue to develop and create innovative programs to meet people exactly where they are. So we get somebody that comes to us from prison or jail or out of rehab for 30, 60 days, we ask them, what is it that they want to work on? And we help them to accomplish their goals, their inspirations, their dreams. Some people say, I just need somewhere stable and supportive to live. And we help with housing. We provide housing programs through our HUD funding. Well, some people say, I want to go to college, I want to obtain a GED, I want to go to plumbing school, I want to go to school to become an electrician. And then we link them up with different trades. We link them up with the community colleges. We link them up with GED programs, in addition to ongoing support system. Our program is like, our staff are like the cheerleaders. We're the ones that saying, you can do it, you got this. You would be surprised and amazed of having somebody that continue to tell you, you got this and you can do this. And how that really inspires motivation, how that uplifts people and give people the courage and the hope. Because this work and this job and the people we deal with are often referred to as the downtrodden. These are the people, it's nothing to see the guy who's been on the corner for the last 20 years collecting coins. And he walks into our building and say, can I get some coffee? And I say, go right ahead. Or some may say, hey, I want some help today. We have a mobile unit that's out 5 days a week going into the prostituted areas where, everything under the sun and moon is going down, and we provide clean needles, we provide condoms, we have a harm reduction program. That helps to reduce HIV contraction. It helps to reduce hepatitis C transmission. So we're doing a lot. We have an intensive outpatient program where we have master social workers that provide one-on-one and group therapy. We now have a primary care component to our organization where we have a physician, a nurse practitioner that provides basic physical health screening. We're all about the more holistic approach. We've also recently hired a psychiatrist and licensed social workers to assist people who have mental health illness as well. We found that at least 70% of the people who had substance use disorder also had a mental health disorder as well, which is often referred to as a co-occurring disorder. And so we're really just all about addressing the whole person, because you find out people put down drugs and put down alcohol, and now they pick up the fork. And the food can easily manifest into another addiction. That can manifest into high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, and it goes on and on. And so we're at a place now where we're more holistic approach and not just focusing on the substance abuse, but also the physical, mental well-being. We have yoga classes. We offer meditation and mindfulness classes as well, and sessions and groups. We also have a training component where we train folks who aspire to work in this field to become a state certified recovery coach. We have an 8-week training program that can help prepare people for the state exam. So we've kind of launched and we've kind of expanded in a whole lot of areas over the last couple of years.
Wow, that's a lot. So talk a little bit about your global programming, specifically in Africa, because you do programming and you have relationships where you talk about recovery and addiction in Africa.
So one of the things in Africa, I was part of a group of University of Illinois, Chicago, and an international organization out of Washington, D.C., along with Center for Disease Control. And our job was to reduce the HIV rates in Africa. And at the time, we realized that in Tanzania specifically, East Africa was a transshipment community for the drug traffickers, where pounds of pure heroin was going through that East African country. And over the years, a significant amount of people were addicted to heroin, and they were addicted to IV drug use. And so, if you know anything about HIV and AIDS rates, 40 to 50% of HIV and AIDS rates have attributed to IV transmission, IV drug sharing dirty needles, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one of the things we found interesting was they didn't have no recovery programs
Wow.
in East Africa. So people who were struggling and had their challenges with drug problems, they either ended up in a mental institution or they ended up incarcerated. And think about it, this is a underdeveloped country.
Mm-hmm.
When I talk about underdeveloped, imagine walking into a mental health institution that is complete concrete. And I'm telling you from personal experience, where I walked into a room of I'd say 500 square feet, and about 60 black men. Obviously, they're all Africans,
Mm-hmm.
and they are completely nude and they are completely sedated with psychiatric medication. And there's a barrel in the middle of the floor that's about 5 feet tall, filled with water, and everybody bathed in that barrel.
Mm.
In the meantime, everybody's walking around this building. Their eyes are red, bloodshot red, and you can tell they're sedated. They're moving very, very slow. And this is what happens in underdeveloped countries. So we realize, I can tell you stories about prisons and the jails, and it only gets worse.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I realized is that we needed some recovery programs to help. In order to reduce HIV use, we have to help promote recovery. And that's what we did. We empowered some of the local people in Zanzibar. It's an island called Zanzibar. So Tanzania has Dar es Salaam, which is the mainland that is comprised of about 70% Christianity. Then Zanzibar, which is an island, and then they have a neighboring island that's part of Zanzibar called Pemba. And now this island is about 99% Islamic. Their laws correlate with the Islam.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't have a pig on that island. That's how serious it is. So you can only imagine certain underdeveloped countries that have you know um, very strong religious correlation, tend sometimes to miss out on some of the basic program stuff that's available. And so they actually open their arms. I mean, they open their arms to folks in Zanzibar. When I say if there was anywhere in the world that I could go live um, and live comfortable, happy, and peaceful, it would be Zanzibar.
Wow.
The people may not have as much as the tangible stuff that we have here in the States, but their spirits are made of gold. They're the most humbling people you ever want to meet, the most kindest people you want to meet. And so now we have a cadre of folks, and this project started probably around 2007, I believe. And so think about it. Now I've had relationships with folks for 13, 14 years. And now they are self-sustained recovery programs. In fact, if you Google Zanzibar and Detroit Recovery Project, they named two of their first homes after Detroit Recovery Project on Zanzibar. I
Wow.
mean, so the people again is amazing. it's been a just an amazing experience to have that interaction in another country. The funny thing is, I remember one of the years we were over there. We spent time in Kenya in an area called Mombasa. And do you know, I was reading the book Dreams of My Father
Yeah.
by President Barack Obama, and and I actually not reading it. I did the
The
audio book,
book. Hmm.
which I love it because you can just appreciate his voice narrating it.
Yeah.
And he talked about how he had family ties in Kenya, and it's more specifically in an area called Mombasa, which is where his father and his father's sister was from. And I remember one year, January, me and Dr. Trent was in Mombasa for New Year's Eve in our shorts and flip flops, talking recovery. And so, we was just ecstatic because it was like paradise. The only place in the world where you see red monkeys walking around. So we just had a lot of experiences, but thinking about, and then the folks were so geeked because they knew President Barack Obama was running for the presidency. And so the Kenyan folks, the Tanzanian folks, they were all ecstatic. They had signs, "Go Obama." Um, it was just unbelievable, Kim, unbelievable. And so just having that energy, that time, and watching and having those experiences. And now when I have those experiences and I talk to my colleagues from out the country, and it's like, what is going on with your president?
Exactly.
It's a lot of negativity involved, and so I think I'm thankful that I've had a good opportunity to travel abroad and work on something I think is very meaningful and very impactful, and that it's important that we realize that addiction is just don't stop in the neighborhood or in the ghetto or in the inner city, but addiction has risen and reared its ugly face or ugly head throughout the country. It's now hit the reservations. The Native Americans are struggling more. It has hit rural and suburban America in these last 5 years, unlike ever before in the history of our country. Um, but addiction has been the pink elephant in the living room. It's been the thing that people have not wanted to talk about.
Mhm.
And that's why it's been the thing that has continuously bit people um, in the ass, so to speak.
Mhm.
Um, so, for me, when you talk about politics, I'm just concerned about how are we going to continue to leverage more resources to support and sustain our organization. When you talk about you have a 12-year-old son, we have to make sure that we have programs in our community that's educating him about the dangers of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs so
Mhm.
that he doesn't fall into the trap of experiment with drugs and alcohol. So
Mhm.
we need more resources for prevention. We need more resources for treatment because once you start experimenting, eventually you're gonna need treatment. And
Yeah.
then when you need treatment, you're gonna need a be able to sustain recovery. So we need resources to continuously sustain and support our communities.
Wow. That was fantastic. So you brought up something and it made me think of a conversation that I often have with my husband. We talk about the difference between how people respond to opioid addiction versus other drugs. What are your thoughts on that? Because I know, I think it was a few years ago when K Spice first came and they said, oh, it's an epidemic. And I thought, but crack and heroin and cocaine been running around inner cities forever, and you're not doing specials like that, but K Spice and huffing and other things like that, and now opioids like Oxycontin and Vicodin, now all of a sudden seem to have been placed at a higher level of importance or more concern, at least is what I can see. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do agree. I think it's definitely the opioids epidemic has been amplified. And I'll tell you, with that amplification has also came billions of dollars of resources
Mhm.
that was not there prior to the opioid epidemic. Crack cocaine did not yield a strong advocacy. So the opioid epidemic, you know, suburban folks say not in my backyard, NIMBY. When suburban folks know how to get together,
Mhm.
rally, advocate, and end up doing a testimony on Congress and turn something into some revenue.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, we have to. I think. I think as blacks we don't do a good job
Mhm.
advocating. We don't know that advocacy formula as others. You know, I mean, during the crack cocaine epidemic, it was demonized, it was demoralized, and it ended up becoming more about criminalization and incarceration.
Mhm.
And so, if you notice, opioid, opioid, opioid addiction, you know, it doesn't even have the same negative connotation that crack cocaine got. You know, a friend of mine say, "Why would you smoke some stuff between somebody's booty?" You know, it's just a negativity, and so I think we have to learn. We got to learn to be more um, effective with advocating to leverage resources. And I think we just missed out on that. I
Mhm.
just don't think we spend enough time during the crack cocaine epidemic in Congress and holding our politicians responsible to identify resources. But billions of dollars have come to fruition in the last 5 years.
Wow. That tells me everything. When you see money start flying in, that shows you what's important and what people care about. I also find it interesting because you talked about how people typically can have a drug addiction of some sort and a mental issue with it. And with COVID right now, anxiety is rising. And a lot of people are feeling anxious. The statistics have said it's gone up almost 30%. People are talking about they are feeling more depressed. Are we seeing addiction rates increase because of that? And if so, are you concerned based on how you see funding coming down?
So I'm really, really glad you brought that up. So yes, number one, COVID-19 has definitely increased and amplified anxiety, depression, and something known as complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay.
What is that? That is when you continuously relive and continuously feel some of the pain that you felt from watching your loved ones die from COVID-19. Some of the so some of the things people experience have been insurmountable amounts of loneliness, bouts of loneliness.
Mhm.
You know, we're a human race, and we're meant to have interaction, social interaction. And so a lot of that was ceased during the onset of COVID-19.
Mhm.
And so loneliness, depression usually leads to consumption of alcoholism, overconsumption of drug use. So we've had an increase of overdose deaths since COVID-19. We've had we've seen a spike of drug usage since COVID-19, and we've also seen an explosion of COVID-19 and its impact on the mental health system. And
Mhm.
so we've been creative in terms of developing and creating telehealth service practice. But as you know, the population that we deal with don't always have a cell phone, don't always have internet, and become very hard and difficult to reach. And so our recovery model, recovery programs throughout the country has heavily been built on socialization. You know, recovering folks hug each other the moment they see each other. And so we've done everything we could do at our agency to adhere to the COVID-19 work regulations in terms of putting up the screen. We have a tablet in our front office So the moment you walk in our building, you have to put your face in front of the tablet, and then it reveals your body temperature. And then that body temperature goes to a tablet to the front desk, and then you're buzzed in to reduce COVID exposure, because we're already anticipating that there will be another COVID-19 explosion in our country. And so we're adhering to the regulations. Staff have gloves, masks, and everything. But there is work. We will, and I only imagine that more and more people are going to need help. Mental, to deal with the anxiety, to deal with the depression, to deal with the loneliness, and the complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
So my husband is working in mental health care. So I hear these stories. I hear the stories about when someone comes in with the opioid addiction, how insurance treats them versus someone who comes in with something else. But it's interesting because I've said to him, you know, it seems like you guys have so many more people coming in saying they want to hurt themselves. They're hearing voices or they're having breakdowns that they probably would not have had before, as you said, because we are human. We need that touch. We need that connection. And people just unfortunately right now don't have that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you got the first-hand information, Kim B. Davis.
Andre, I could tell you some stories and you'd be like, yep. I'd be like, but why?
Yes, yes,
It,
yeah.
I mean, it to me is fascinating, and I don't mean that as a way to talk down to people, but it's just interesting the needs that people have. And one of the things I think people don't really understand what addiction is. And so my next question to you is, if there was something that you could share for people to understand what addiction is, what would that be?
So, addiction is the use typically of a substance, a mind, mood altering chemical, something that people is using on a daily and frequent basis, despite the consequences. And if that means the consequences are failed relationships, or significant relationships that are affected because of drug use. And they can be alcohol use, marijuana, prescription pills, cocaine, heroin, what have you. If you've had that experience, it's time to get help. If you've had the experience of losing job after job, it's time to get help. If you've had the experience of not being able to pass the drug test, it's time to get help. If you found yourself in jail due to a DUI, or if you find yourself in jail due to being in possession of some type of illegal substance, or breaking the law, or harming or hurting somebody while you were under the influence of drugs or alcohol, it's time to get help. So
Absolutely.
for me, addiction, usually those type of things manifest in an individual's life. If you're using drugs or alcohol to medicate your sadness, your depression, or your loneliness, it's time to get help. If you're using drugs and alcohol to medicate a relationship that you don't want to be in no more, it's time to get help. Whatever the reason is, it's time to get help. But so, like, to me, and Kim, I'm a person in long-term recovery, and what that means is I have not used drugs or alcohol in over 32 years. And clearly it's a lifestyle for me. And I don't try to impose my lifestyle on others. But I will tell you this, on everything I love, nothing is better than living a drug and alcohol-free lifestyle.
Amen.
Not, not being able to remember everything that happened all the time. Not, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Not just having a good handle on what's happening, a good handle on what's reality is like, and not trying to escape reality, not trying to escape yourself. Most people who caught up in addiction are trying to escape themselves. trying to run from themselves, don't want to cope with their problems. And the drug and the alcohol use be the response to the problem. So typically people have fight or flight, or they go use some drugs and alcohol and think they'll forget it. But the fight and flight, instead of sticking and stand, instead of leaning in the problem, exploring the problem, and taking that problem as an opportunity to grow and learn from it, to heal from it, and to get better from it, to deal. But, you know, we live in a society where people looking to escape and take a pill or a drug for every time they feel, oh, this feel messed up. Oh, I got to get high.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is too much. Oh, I got to get high.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to change the mindset.
Absolutely, we do. I'm gonna add preacher. I'm gonna add preacher because I thought you was preaching for a minute. I was about to say amen.
Hey, this is a ministry. You know,
It
this is a
is. It
ministry.
is.
Yeah, I will be. You can call me. You know, Minister Dre.
Well, Andre, you know I appreciate you. You know I love you for everything
Yes,
that
and
you
I
do.
love you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just am amazed at all the things that you can do. And I've actually watched you help people and transform lives. And I just want to say thank you. If no one has said that to you, thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for
Thank
standing up for those, as you said, the downtrodden, because there's no one that speaks for them. There's no politician that stands up there and says, hey, we need to help the people that are addicted. They don't care about them because they don't pad their pockets. They don't donate to their political action committees. They aren't the people that are running to the booth to go vote. Nobody cares about them. Like you said, you see them on the street corner, you might feel sorry for them and give them $1 or $2, but then you talk about them later. They need to get a job. They need to get their life together. I'm out here working, doing this and doing that, and you don't even know what their story is.
And that's why I appreciate you, because you've always been on the battlefield fighting for people who don't have a voice. And you've been a great leader in our community as an author and as an advocate and an activist. And so I just appreciate you for what you do. I mean, this podcast is amazing. I know you were telling me earlier how you're in several other countries. And we have to continue to engage in these dialogues and conversations so that people can find help and find other resources that they may need. This is the least talked about subject in the United States. You haven't heard not one presidential debate. Well, I think they skirted around the opioid addiction, but hell, when they ask questions, they skirt around
Yeah.
answering the question so much you forget about the question.
We
You
just
know?
see the fly on the head. That's what we see. We see the
Yeah,
fly on the head.
the fly on the shit.
Right, right, right. Or
Excuse my French.
exactly. Or, somebody is looking over at somebody telling somebody that they're not smart. Don't use that word with me, or wrong. And can we have a debate between grown people? Like, seriously, can we talk about the issues that
It's,
are impacting us as Americans?
it's so much work, Kim. So I'm
Yeah,
just grateful to be on the battlefield with you. We fighting. I don't see you like I used to, but at the end of the day, I know we're on the same ship, rolling in different directions to really help our people. So I encourage you to continue to do this good work, and would love to be back on the show in the future.
absolutely. We're gonna talk about it now. See, now you told me we don't talk about it. So guess what? You're gonna be in rotation.
All right, keep me on rotation. I'm committed.
Absolutely. So before we go, because our time is going fast, tell us how we can support Detroit Recovery Project, and tell us how we can reach you. And then thirdly, if there's anyone who needs help, is there a special number for them to call, because you have psychological services now, you have medical services and different things. And so I'm sure from what I remember, people have to be evaluated and sort of assessed to figure out what their needs are. So walk through that process.
You sound like a professional, Kim. Yeah, so first things first is Detroit Recovery Project. Our website is recovery, the number 4Detroit.com. That's recovery, the number 4Detroit.com. Our direct office number is 313-365-3100. That's 313-365-3100. If you know somebody that needs help, you can call that number. We're open 6 days a week, typically till 8 and 10 o'clock on some nights between Monday and Fridays. Our hours are on our website. We have an east side and a west side location. So if you're on the east side of Detroit, we have an office on 6 Mile and I-75, 1121 East McNichols. And then if you're on the west side of Detroit, we also have an office located at 1145 West Grand Boulevard, just near the tip of Michigan Avenue. We're here to help those who need help, to help those who want help. And that's the major part about recovery, Kim, is we can only help those who want to help themselves. We can't force it upon nobody. They have to want this, and if they want it bad enough, they'll get it and they'll do what they have to do, because it's a job. It's a lot of work. There are some psychological impacts. There are some mental needs that have to be addressed, and people have to, be rewired and provided some new tools, some coping mechanism tools to help them to, navigate through this recovery process.
Thank you, Andre. Give us your website one more time and that phone number.
Okay, it's recovery, the number 4 Detroit.com. That's recovery, the number 4 Detroit.com. And that's 313-365-3100, 313-365-3100. I can be reached there directly. My email is on the website. And if somebody leaves a message and would like to contact me directly, you can call that number as well.
Thank you, Andre, for being on the Kim B. Davis Show. It was our pleasure. We learned so much from you today, and hopefully we can have you back on soon, and we can continue this great conversation around addiction and recovery, because we want to help people. And the Kim B. Davis Show is all about healing. And one of the topics that we talk about quite a bit is mental health.
Thank you so much, Kim B. Davis. Take care. God bless you.
Thank you. As always, remember, hopefully we'll see you on our next episode. Thank you, Andre, for being on. Remember to tune in for the next episode. And as always, be magnificent.
Amen.